This is Emil Zatopek, or the Czech locomotive. During the Helsinki Olympics in 1952, Emil became the first and to this day only ever runner to win the 5,000 metres, 10,000 metres and marathon at the same Olympics, all within 3 days of each other. And this was the first time Emil had ever run a marathon. 2 years after these Olympics in 1954, Emil also became the first runner to break 29 minutes for 10K. During his career, he set 18 world records and is widely considered by many to be the GOAT of distance running. He is credited with saying he wasn't talented enough to run and smile at the same time, which is something I can relate to quite heavily. Emil's training style was controversial for the time. He trained in a style I like to call ragging it. His training consisted of high volume, high intensity running, and pretty much only that. His philosophy was learn to run fast by running fast. Slow running, he argued, taught you nothing. This training style not only helped him break records, but also garnered a lot of ire from his fellow athletes of the time. He was seen as foolish for running ridiculously hard all the time. Intervals weren't particularly new for Emil's time, but he took them to the extreme. Emil's story of succeeding with unpopular, unconventional training styles is not a story unique to him. The history of distance running is littered with the shadows of what was previously thought to be the best way to train. When records are shattered convincingly, such as in Emil's case, elements of their style get baked into the future DNA as the best way to train. I start with Emil because he is the antithesis of a hugely popular best way to train in the modern day, Zone 2 running. What is Zone 2 running? Zone 2 running is a very broad sense, refers to higher volume, low intensity training. A kind of running you can do without destroying yourself. The sort of pace you can hold a conversation at. The actual zone in Zone 2 is commonly meant to mean a person's second heart rate zone, typically 60 to 70% of that person's max heart rate. By this definition, someone with a max heart rate of 190 would have a Zone 2 between 114 and 133 beats per minute. This is an incredibly broad way to define this, and there are many ways to set heart rate zone. This is just an example. Please don't come at me. The idea is to keep us below our aerobic threshold, or LT1. This is a level of effort where most of our energy comes from burning fat instead of other sources. This is also why you'll commonly hear this zone referred to as the fat burning zone. Running above this aerobic threshold, LT1, our body needs more energy than we can comfortably get from fat, so our body starts to use more and more readily available glycogen. Worth noting, our bodies aren't binary. The second you go above our threshold or above your Zone 2, you don't suddenly stop burning fat completely and switch to glucose only. Your body is almost always using a mix of energy systems. Which one is being used more depends on how hard you're working your little legs. Before the rise and ease of access of decent heart rate monitors, which gave parkrun demons access to an easy way to see Zone 2, Zone 2 was simply long, easy running. In short, high volume running, most of it at a conversational pace. No 3,000-pound Garmin required. One of the main purported benefits of Zone 2 is simply that it's easy, so you can do lots of it. Easy running like this doesn't stress the body, so you're able to build up a much higher volume without destroying yourself. Zone 2 is an incredibly popular way to train these days. And while it's always been known that running more make you better runner, it's not always been as popular as it is today. You've only got to spend 5 minutes on TikTok and you're guaranteed to see at least 7 Zone 2 demons preaching its power and saying how you need to do more of it. The popular way to train back in the 1800s would have made today's Zone 2 lover cry with joy. The main focus was simply lots of long walks with short bursts of running, maybe half a mile or so. This may seem funny to many an influencer these days, but these lads back in the day had never even seen a Garmin. Throughout the 1800s and into the early 1900s, notable athletes such as Walter George and William Cummings popularized training styles that consisted of hours of walking with just short bursts of running at the end. Moving into the early 20th century, this simple, high volume, low intensity approach that we might see as an ancestor of Zone 2 was still very much the style. But as we move towards the Roaring 20s, we begin to see the seeds of a more interval style training take hold. In Finland, coaches such as Lauri Pukala began to develop a more organised and systemic approach to training. Rather than chucking a 50-metre sprint at the end of your 6-hour walk, they flipped it on its head and developed a style of fast running with short recovery period. The idea was to let athletes train at a higher intensity for a longer time. Paavo Nurmi, or the Flying Finn, was a dominant figure of this period. He won 9 golds and 3 silvers over the 12 events he took part in during his Olympic career. He was also the first ever athlete to win 5 golds at a single Olympic game. Paavo's style was in stark contrast to the long, slow distance running that came before. He trained in a more high volume interval style. Morning walks with sprints followed by track workouts with faster running and jogging for recovery. This is otherwise known as intervals for the modern runner. Paavo was also a really big fan of training his mental focus during running. This makes him, I think, the first athlete to have ever notably locked in. Moving into the 1930s, Paavo's style of ragging it on a track was still very much the name of the game. But we did start to see some tweaks to his method. A Swedish coach, Gösta Holmer, pioneered the fartlek method, a Swedish term meaning speed play. Fartlek training, for those out the loop, is just normal interval style training without being bound by the constraint of time. It's a much more playful and varied style of running. Unspecified periods of ragging it followed by unspecified periods of taking it easy. The best way I found to describe this is imagine you're running down the street, pick a random object you can see and sprint to it. When you get there, pick another object in front of you and take it easy until you get there. Repeat this for however long you want. The idea for this type of training is to not follow a strict plan and to vary your speed based on how you feel and the landscape you're running on. Still massively popular today as a way to break free from the shackles of a stopwatch and just run free, just how God intended. As we move into the 1940s, we see a steady continuation of a strong focus on interval style training, whether fartlek or more traditional. During this time though, our crazy lad Emil begins to take things to the next level. His belief that runners should learn to run fast by just running fast really begins to take hold. His grueling sessions of 40 by 400 meter repeats became how the cool kids train and ultimately culminated with Emil dominating the 1954 Olympics. Moving into the 50s, people have started to get bored of sprinting everywhere, and we saw some new ideas begin to emerge and the overall structure of training begin to change. Popular coaches of the time like Arthur Lydiard had training systems that emphasized building a strong aerobic base, which is something you Zone 2 fetishists might know something about. Their styles began to popularize the idea of periodization, breaking training up into different phases. An athlete might start by focusing heavily on high volume, low intensity running, building that aerobic base. Only after they've done this and ramped up their mileage to build endurance would they be introduced to hill training and anaerobic stuff and generally faster running. Percy Cerruti took a similar but more holistic approach to training. The idea was to incorporate more cross training into the schedule. Strength training, varied terrains and paces. The athletes would train on sand dune. The introduction of strength training alongside distance running also probably coincides with the first time someone called themselves a hybrid athlete, which is something I can't ever forgive Percy for doing to us. This trend of liking big aerobic bases and not lying about it carried on well into the 60s and 70s. The focus really centered on high mileage, with many elite runners regularly logging between 15 and 20 miles per day. Athletes like Frank Shorter and his Olympic golds in the 70s also contributed massively to a boom in popularity of running as a sport. Frank's style was heavily influenced by Arthur Lydiard, which meant his focus was very much on high volume, low to moderate intensity training. Towards the end of the 70s, in 1977, Polar Electro invented what is widely believed to be the first wireless heart rate monitor. Initially, this was an innovation only to be used by the Finnish national cross-country ski team. But in 1983, Polar released this device to the public. To help market the new technology, Polar came up with the idea of levels, a way to group heart rates into their own little bucket. Level 1 for very, very light intensity. Level 2 for still light intensity, something you could do for a long time. They associated this level 2 with aerobic base building, which was a popular idea. The name levels didn't really stick though. Consumers preferred to refer to these levels as zones, finally putting the zone in Zone 2 running and allowing athletes to, for the first time ever, do their long, easy distance in a quantifiable way. Having previously relied on feeling to judge what easy running was, the first wave of running data nerds now had a way to be much more specific about their training. Into the 90s though, these devices weren't without their critics. Lots of coaches lambasted the device's flaws, pointing out that external factors such as heat, illness, or poor sleep can inflate a person's heart run, making it slightly less useful as a perfect measure for a person's effort. Despite these critics though, these devices and the insights now available to runners no doubt contributed massively to the boom in low intensity running that we see today. New training philosophies such as the Maftone method focused on low heart rate training, an approach not too dissimilar to aerobic base building, but now with an easy and concrete way to say, yeah, that was easy. It's human nature to measure the vibes. It was no longer just that a run felt easy, it had to be within the lower ranges of your heart rate zone. Zone 2, low intensity training gradually blended into an upcoming modern and sleek style of training known as polarized training. The idea here being that 80% of your running should be in that Zone 2, really easy, with the other 20% being in Zone 4 and 5, really hard. If that 80-20 split sounds familiar, it's because it is. Books in the early 2010s, such as 80-20 running, became hits and really blew this style of mostly zone 2 running into the spotlight. From there, with the popular training style already being 80% of running easy, it's only a short leap to where we are today. With some runners strongly believing that you should only ever do zone 2, or at the very least, it should be the vast majority of your running. Nowadays, even thinking about zone 3 will get you kicked out of certain running clubs. What do we think? Is zone 2 useless? Of course, it's not. Low intensity training has always been a part and should always be a part of any runner's diet. This isn't a new idea, as we've seen. For most of the 20th century, the concept of zone 2 running had nothing to do with zones. It was simply the idea of doing lots of running at low intensity. I think I prefer this way of thinking about it. An issue I see is that people get bogged down by the numbers and the measure becomes the goal. Instead of the point of these runs being to take it easy and get distant in a way that won't kill you, runners now disregard runs if their HR went 2 beats too high. I think a zone 2 HR is a really good measure of an easy run, but it's not the only one, and we shouldn't get caught up in numbers. If you enjoy your run and it felt easy, but your heart rate was slightly high, that's fine. Those miles aren't worthless. More than anything, I think an issue I have with the boom of zone 2 running is how dogmatic it's become. This is now the only way to train, according to some. You can forget about silly little things like enjoying yourself or running easy because it feels easy. Your job is now to stare at your watch like a prison guard to make sure it doesn't creep into zone 3, and hence the run will become pointless.